to make it even more common so people would be even more likely to use something exotic and not be afraid of it.
The thing about the book I really like, Michael, it's how easy it is to use, and you made it simple. You didn't. It doesn't look that complicated, and it's just that's the way a cookbook should be, I think.
Thanks. I broke the recipes down so you can kind of mix and match the recipes as you want to. I put marinades and spice rubs in different areas of the book, so you can mix it with another recipe if you wanted to. So you weren't stuck doing like the old French cuisine. It had to be just this way. It had to be just this, so just so. It's a little more, I would say, valuable, to know that you can change the recipe on the fly if you like to. And it'll all work together. Most of the things, are seafood-based, of course, in my book. So everything that I wrote there, every marinade, every sauce, would be for a seafood or a light white meat like pork. Or sometimes even, chicken. But chicken's a little too boring for me, so I go and I use something a little different,
Yeah.
Before you even start cooking.
Wow.
So, it's like you find something you know, and then you apply it to something you don't know, but it's common. You got a roast pork, or you got a pork chop, or you got a pork tenderloin, or you have, let's just say, a highly flavored bird, like a duck, a roast duck. And some things can be switched and manipulated a little bit as long as you know the flavors that you want at the end.
It just sounds like you're so passionate about this that you're able to work this way, because you
that's what I find.
Love it.
I find the same thing. When you enjoy what you do for work, it's never work anymore.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it sounds wonderful. You make it sound like poetry. You really do. Well, speaking of poetry, you've written a second book. You found time in your busy life to write a second book, and I love the title, Underneath the Cloudless Sky. So, talk about that book a little bit. Is it more of the Caribbean flavor? What are you wanting to add?
What I did is I separated out from, in this book, Underneath the Cloudless Sky is more of a book where you're going to find a little more exotic things, like an ugly fruit coulis. You're going to find soursop. Okay, you're going to find a blackened mango sea bass. I mean, not just blackened sea bass, but you blacken the mango first, and then you put it on top of the sea bass before you cook it. So it has a little twist, a little more exotic again, and a lot of seafood, but a little more meats and poultry in this book than in the other book. But in this second book, it's more like an American exotic Caribbean mix.
And so tell me about the book. How is it divided? Is it sort of like the other one? There, it seems like there's an appetizers,
Right. It's set up in the same chapter manner. There's a chapter for le repertoire, which is bases and seasoning ingredients and spice rubs and some flavored oils and things like that. Then there's your appetizer section, what I call boucher. It's little tiny bites of something really flavorful. So you get a real pop. When you bite into something, it might be a small amount, but it's really zesty or flavorful.
I like that.
Then, of course, you got sauces, which I expand my coulis experimentations with more exotic food, more exotic Caribbean food, I should say. It's all Caribbean, of course, but everything that I've used in this book is grown right here in South Florida.
Wow.
That's the emphasis of this book, is reshaping the South Florida exotic pantry with a metropolitan vision.
Oh, wow.
And the metropolitan vision is the way you plate the food when it's done. More exotic, more like a New York style, but I don't go to the lengths that they do with every tiny little tweezer and everything, making it just so a plate for a picture.
Right.
I keep it real, like people want a nice portion of fish when they eat. They don't want like 3 or 4 ounces. They want a nice 6, 7, 8 ounce portion, depending on what it is,
Right.
So I keep it real, but it has an exotic twist, of course. It's another 20 pages longer than the first book, but I think you'll find it just as interesting, even more if you ever lived here in South Florida, because you'll be able to go right to South Florida and go to some of the places I talk about, find the same food, and the same recipes in your house.
And it's American
you
Riviera. Yeah, we're looking at it right now.
Really? Oh, cool. I just popped that in there just for a, because in that first section I talk a lot about, the culinary uses of all the exotic foods, like Adamoya and guava and lychee and malanga and ugly fruit and swamp cabbage and all these weird sounding things, but they all really taste good. That's why they're in the book.
Wow. Can you, Michael, do you have a recipe handy that you could just share, that you could just read to us?
Sure. Okay. One of my favorite things is ugly fruit, because it's a mixture of a grapefruit and a mandarin orange.
Oh,
and the ugly fruit, we do a couligret style, which is the juice of 10 of the ugly fruit, a little shallot, bay leaf, thyme, and some sake. And then you take a little rice wine vinegar, you let that reduce in a pan, okay, to where it concentrate, the flavors concentrate, the juice itself gets thicker. You let it cool down, and then you add, olive oil, a little seasoning, a little bit of sugarcane syrup, which is jarapo down here. It's a drink that you get in Latino markets. It's they have a machine that squeezes cane, sugar cane, and the juice comes out raw. The raw juice is used, as a refreshing drink down here on ice.
Wow.
So, well, of course, that's the way rum is made too. You know that. So you take that and you blend it up. You put it in a high-speed blender, and that becomes your couligret for a really great dish that would be. You want to take a fish that's a little more fatty, like a sea bass, because the acid content, you want the yin and yang factor on the way you produce fish. So you do a fattier fish because you have the acid of the sauce, and they counterbalance each other when you put it all together, and it all comes out in the finished product.
I'm loving the way this man talks.
Do you like that one?
I love it.
I have a whole bunch of cool things here. Like I told you before about the soursop sauce.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorites. Now you take the soursop, take 2 of them. You put in you take the skin off, you take the seeds out. You put the pulp in a stainless steel pot, heavy bottom stainless steel pot, and then you put some Chardonnay wine, some lime juice, a bay leaf, a couple peppercorns, and you let that cook down to where it gets pulpy, really smooshed up. All the fruit disintegrates while it cooks. Then you go ahead and add your cream. Let that reduce down again by half.
Yum. Then
you take it off the fire and let it cool down, and then you add a little bit of butter. Now that is your soursop or blanc, which will go beautifully over, a lesser, fattier fish like a yellowtail snapper, something like swordfish, where the fat content is lesser than like a sea bass or a salmon, where you use an acid-based type of flavor to do the yin and yang. So we're doing a yin and yang factor for like a lighter flavored or a less oily fish like the yellowtail. So you get that yin and yang factor from the sauce with the drier fish. So, that's just the way, the book is set up. I have something called a starfruit essence, and what it is, you take the starfruit and you mix it up with some vermouth and peppercorns and bay leaf, and you let it sit overnight in your refrigerator. Then you do this is where my chemistry background comes in now. Listen to this. I do a fractional distillation on top of a stove to make the extract of starfruit. Then you